Okay, Katie, Trump made some remarkable statements about U.S. expansionism today. Let's start with Canada and what he said about this country.
Yeah, Donald Trump was asked about all of these comments he's made about making Canada the 51st state. And largely, the analysis has been, well, Donald Trump is trying to humiliate Justin Trudeau, or he's just cracking jokes, as we heard from the Canadian ambassador. But today, he used this news conference where he spoke about a range of topics over an hour and 18 minutes, and he laid out his argument why he thinks it is necessary, or why he thinks it's a good idea for Canada to become the 51st state. He was asked by a reporter at this news conference if he would consider using military force to make that happen. He said no, economic force, and then he said this.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
So he presented his argument citing a number of factors. First, he's frustrated about the trade deficit. Yes, there is a trade deficit. Canada sells more goods into the United States. He exaggerated the numbers like he does when he talks about the trade deficit, but that is something he sees as a frustration. He describes it as a subsidy, and he is frustrated with how much the United States spends on military defense spending, citing what it costs. He didn't offer any specific numbers, but what the United States contributes in order to keep Canada, its northern neighbor, safe, which we know the United States has been pushing for decades. Different administrations pushing Canada to do more when it comes to defense spending and more on the world stage when it does come to defense. He also talked about how he wants to basically upend supply chains. He says we don't need Canadian automobiles. Just think what that would do to the auto sector in Canada. He says we don't need Canadian dairy. We don't need Canadian lumber. All of these kinds of things, and we don't need their stuff. This is the biggest concern that Canada has, is that the trading relationship with its most important partner could be upended. And then he went on to add this.
Why are we supporting a country, 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down. And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it.
So it certainly does not seem like Donald Trump is joking at this point. Earlier in the news conference, he talked about how he encouraged Wayne Gretzky to run for prime minister, and then joked again that said perhaps he should run as governor. And he also talked about those tariffs that he's threatening to impose on Canada and Mexico through executive order the first day he's in office. He again reaffirmed his commitment to do that. And David, as we reported last night, sources are telling me that the people around Prime Minister Justin Trudeau are increasingly convinced Donald Trump has made up his mind on imposing tariffs. And today is a sort of another reminder of that. One thing I should say, Justin Trudeau did put a response out there on Twitter. We're going to pull it up. And David, I do have my notes ready this time. We can pull up that tweet right now. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partner. So that is the response, the initial response from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at this time. I know that our colleagues were doing multiple stories on this today, so there's plenty of space for reaction on that.
Yeah, we've got an interview with Minister Champagne coming up where we talk about this a little bit. But, you know, Katie, it's remarkable. We've never had someone in the Oval Office talking about Canada like this. But he's also talking about other expansionist plans. I mean, what else did the president-elect have to say?
Well, first of all, they want to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. But far more importantly, he said he would be opening to use military force to annex Greenland, which is a Danish sovereign territory, forgive me, and then take control of the Panama Canal. He was lashing out at the legacy of Jimmy Carter, saying it never should have been sold at the time, and talking about all of the concern around that, even though at the same time Jimmy Carter's body was being, the funeral procession was making its way to Washington, D.C. He was disparaging the legacy of Jimmy Carter. But it was, again, a remarkable thing to hear an incoming president of the United States talking about being open to using military force in order to move forward with his expansionist plans. He said that the United States, and it's important to note that Donald Trump appears to be so serious about this. He sent his son, his eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., to Greenland on a fact-finding mission. But have a little listen to what Donald Trump said about why it is that he wants to annex Greenland.
We need Greenland for national security purposes. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world.
So that is the kind of language we are hearing from Donald Trump in this moment. I spoke with a Republican strategist just a short time ago, and he continues to say this could be part of a larger negotiating tactic. But at this point, it is certainly not something Donald Trump is backing away from, and it has certainly crossed that line from humiliating joke, particularly when it comes to Canada, to more unwelcome statements.
But you know, Katie, Denmark is a founding member of NATO. They're in that alliance, right? And Article 5 could be triggered by the, it is a remarkable thing to contemplate. That's the CBC's Katie Simpson in Washington. Thanks so much, Katie.
Thanks.
Trump is ramping up his threats against Canada just as Justin Trudeau prepares to step down from running it. He's still Prime Minister, though, until the Liberals choose a successor. And Trudeau tweeted in response to Trump, "There isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada will become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partner." We're going to talk about that with the Power Panel. They're with me now. Kate Harrison, Cheryl Oates, Michelle Cadario, and Emily Nicola. Emily, the Prime Minister is not taking your advice to stop using that platform, despite your impassioned plea in the last segment. But here we have Donald Trump talking about Canada like it's a distressed office building in Midtown Manhattan he's looking to acquire. I mean, how does the political leadership of this country respond to that? Because I've never seen anyone in the Oval Office, near the Oval Office, talk about this country in that way.
It is quite something, and so there's no playbook for that. We've seen the responses from everybody, which is no chance is hell in hell. But while that is being said, how do you actually respond to that is something that is new for Canadians. The thing is, it's not new for Haitians. It's not new for Cuban. It's not new for Puerto Rican. It's not new for Hawaiian. It's not new for Mexicans. And I wish that a lot of people in the Canadian political establishments looked at other peoples around the world who have had this experience before and realize that they're not alone in this and that there's ways to go around this, especially by building coalition. And there's a trap that I think Canadians have sometimes put themselves into, which is that insist on the uniqueness of the Canadian-US relationship in a way that makes it impossible for any other ally around the world to actually help us, because we're saying our relationship is like no other, therefore we're alone in dealing with this.
Right.
That's to me what has been the most resounding in the last couple of weeks of Donald Trump saying this, is that basically nobody in the international community is blinking an eye while you have the United States elected president threatening the sovereignty of another G7 country. That silence is really, really something, and I think we need to understand why that silence is there.
Yeah, Cheryl, it's remarkable because it's not just Canada, and we have built a coalition. For one, it's called NATO, and he's talking about Canada in this way, and he's also talking about using military force to get Greenland, which is a sovereign territory of Denmark, which is a founding nation. I mean, of NATO. I mean, it is a might makes right approach to things. That is alarming. What should Canadian leadership do here?
Well, the fact that we're even saying aloud that the incoming president of the United States has ruled out military force to acquire Canada should just be a wake-up call to how serious this is. It started out kind of, people saying it was a joke. The joke is over, and we are vulnerable right now. We're vulnerable politically, we're vulnerable physically, and the United States has leverage. Donald Trump has leverage, not just because he has military power and not just because he has economic power, but because he's not willing to play by the rules. He is a leader who has thrown out historic conventions, and our approach right now is to tweet platitudes, talk about our neighborly, friendly relationship, and revert to textbook diplomacy. And I think in this case, that's just not going to work as a starting point. And I agree that Canada needs a much stronger plan. What is our leverage? How do we fight back? How are we going to protect our country? It's not going to be through pithy tweets.
No, but there are a lot of things happening on Twitter, Michelle. I want to show you. This is what Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, tweeted today. He said, Canada will never be the 51st state, period. And Poilievre also said he's best positioned to stand up against Donald Trump. Donald Trump was asked about that today, and here's what the president-elect had to say.
The leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st
Then
state.
maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't
Point,
care.
you had suggested that
Listen,
you're
I don't care what he
considering-
says.
Okay, so he doesn't care what Pierre Poilievre says. This is what Jagmeet Singh says in a tweet. He tweeted at Trump saying, cut the crap, Donald. No Canadian wants to join you. We are proud Canadians, proud of the way we take care of each other and defend our nation. Your attacks will hurt jobs on both sides of the border. You come for Canadian jobs, Americans will pay a price. Michelle, you know, he had said nice things about Pierre Poilievre until Pierre Poilievre pushed back on this idea, and then he attacked him. Is this just a lack of respect for the country writ large, do you think? This is like no matter who is in the Prime Minister's office, Trump is just going to be this way to Canada going forward?
Trump is going to be Trump to everybody. He's telling the UK to stop doing windmills in the North Sea. And I can't even remember what else he said about Keir Starmer. He's you know, there's the Panama Canal that he wants to take back. It's Greenland he wants to annex. Canada, you know, he is going at it as a very different force. I will agree with others who've said that, and I don't know that anyone knows how to respond to him. It is we thought he was chaotic and bizarre and could throw a wrench in things in his first term. He hasn't even started yet.
I know.
Right? Like, we're 20 days away from him actually taking power, and holy moly, you know, it's every day there's something new. If there's one thing, he's actually united all the leaders of the parties to say the same thing on an issue that, no, we're not up for grabs, thank you very much. But boy, I don't know that there is an answer to respond to him. I don't know if it's just trying to wait him out, if it's just trying to play up on our economics, trying to showcase the trade that actually goes two ways across the border. And for him to think that he somehow subsidizes our country, he's just making light of and deliberately, I think, not understanding what a trade relationship is amongst two big trading partners.
Well, it's either, Kate, a fundamental misunderstanding or a basic misrepresentation of, you know, trade and all that. I mean, you buy a bunch of oil from Alberta, it goes up in price, you can end up in a trade deficit. But, you know, this, I know the government, the Liberal government, tried to shrug this off as a bit of a joke, you know, from the dinner at Mar-a-Lago. It seems far more serious than that. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. was in Greenland today, meeting with people who want to join the United States. You don't send your eldest boy on a trip like that unless there's some seriousness to it all. So how does the political leadership respond to him?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's the seriousness of Trump's threats, and, you know, he's having, negotiation and banter with us in the way that he is with other countries. And I think I was pleased to see kind of all leaders respond to this conclusively and shut that down. But we are left in a weakened and vulnerable position because of Justin Trudeau's decision yesterday. We have vacated leadership in terms of our negotiation and ability to deal with the United States. We all sat around this table 4 or 5 weeks ago and talked about how the election timing, and every other panelist said it's a bad time to go to an election. Canadians don't want to go to an election during the holidays. I would challenge anybody to say that we are in a stronger position now, leaderless, with an incoming Trump administration, with Canadians not having a say until April, May, June, or later. Justin Trudeau has created a massive leadership vacuum and vulnerability for Canada, and a key difference in how the leaders responded today, beyond Melanie Joly and Trudeau's chest thumping and snarky tweets, I think, as Cheryl rightly pointed out. Pierre Poilievre actually acknowledged that we have to uphold our end of the relationship. We actually have a role to play in terms of upping our NATO and defense spending, and provided some concrete policy resolutions. Justin Trudeau blew up his own border plan. By proroguing Parliament, they're not going to get anything done on the border. So that says to me that they're not at all serious about how they deal with this Trump threat at all, beyond communications, the only thing they know how to do.
But, well, look, the Conservatives still haven't said they're going to get to 2%. They say they're going to move towards it. So, you know, everybody's given the soft language on this. But you saw it, like, Donald Trump wasn't asked about Jagmeet Singh, but he was asked about Pierre Poilievre. We know what he's saying about Trudeau. And it doesn't seem like he cares who is there? So even if there had been an election and Poilievre was prime minister today, I don't know if Donald Trump's posture would change.
I think that
right?
Donald Trump responds well to action. There was a start to that with the border plan that came out in the end of December. I think it probably should have happened earlier. Now there's nothing.
Well, not all of it requires the House of Commons to get done. I mean, they can move existing resources around, but yeah, if they need to change the law and need more money.
How is Dominic LeBlanc going to argue that and bring that plan forward when he's running for leader of the Liberal Party? Potentially, right?
Look, Mr. Trump swatted away what Poilievre had to say like a fly, like an annoying fly. He couldn't care.
And I'm sure that he would be happy to negotiate with a lame duck Prime Minister, Michelle. Come on.
I don't care. He was simply said, I don't care what he says. Like, let's not pretend that all of a sudden somebody's going to come in and things are going to be all kosher.
I don't think I don't think anybody is pretending that at all. I am saying that Donald Trump is a person that responds to action, and we have been left without a leader and without a plan that would bring forward action in Canada's interest right now, conceivably for months.
Yeah, but I guess, Emily, I guess where I'm going with it in my head is I don't know if he cares who is in whatever job. It's what do I get out of this? And if you're going to argue with me, then just swat you away and move on. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be, it could have been Brian Mulroney, it could have been Jean Chrétien, it could be Pierre Poilievre, it could be Jagmeet Singh. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because it doesn't seem like this guy seems to care even less about international norms that he did the first time around. I wasn't sure that'd be possible.
I think we need to have a closer look at the phrase "Make America Great Again," and understand that American nationalism was always about expansionism, and that phrase can also be understood in that way. And so that's why I'm saying it might be new for a lot of Canadians, but there's actually a lot of people who became Canadians because this was been done to their country before, in Latin America, in the Middle East, and Vietnam, in so many places around the world. And this is the reason they are Canadians. And so the one thing I will say is talk to your neighbors if this is new to you, because it's probably not new to them. And the second thing I will say is that a lot of people, what they've learned from that experience is that if you're too dependent on one large power that is much bigger than you and has the power to bully you, it puts you in a vulnerable position. It has been putting us in a vulnerable position, but that now we are all on the same page on the fact that we do know that it's a vulnerable position. And so regardless of what happens with the tariff decision or whatever other decision, I think that a lot of economic actors in Canada should be shifting towards diversifying so that the root cause of the problem, which is our over-dependence on the United States, we're too close to them and not close enough to everybody else. That puts us at risk of being bullied by the biggest military power in the world. And that is something that a lot of Canadians, government in the past has been working towards doing, but perhaps not with the haste at which and economic actors are able to move now that they understand that their profit line and their viability is actually at risk today. Yeah, well, Cheryl, let's give you the last word. As you know, like oil pipelines going to refineries, auto parts going across the border. Boy, that is tough to untangle, and that is, that is the bread and butter of two of the big economic powerhouses in the country, right? So, I mean, just how do you deal with this guy when he keeps shifting the goalposts in very extreme directions? I mean, I was reading the Wikipedia entry on manifest destiny because it feels like that 19th century expansionist vibe is very much back in the U.S.
Well, I don't have a magic solution, you'll be surprised to hear, but I do think we can start from we had all three federal leaders today come out and say this is bad for both of our countries. And that approach just assumes that logic matters to Donald Trump, when we all know that logic does not matter to Donald Trump. We also had Pierre Poilievre come in and say the U.S. is our best friend. Well, I don't know who Pierre Poilievre's friends are, but friends don't typically toy with annexation fantasies. So I think starting from an approach that is not just platitudes, starting from an approach that is not just, relying on what has been a really solid, mutually beneficial relationship for a long period of time, and talking about what is the now and what is the United States to Canada and what is Canada's leverage is just a basic starting point. Yeah, I mean, look, the U.S. can still be your best friend even if you're not getting along with the U.S. president, or the U.S. president-elect in this case. But life after January 20th, that's going to be something. All right, we're out of time. I want to thank you all. Emily Nicola, Michelle Cadario, Cheryl Oates, and Kate Harrison. Thanks so much for being here.